The biggest silver vaults on Earth are quietly emptying, and almost nobody is telling you what is actually left inside them. I do not mean that as a scare line. I mean it the way a man means it when he walks into a warehouse he has walked into for years and notices the shelves have gone bare. The metal that sits under London, in the great vaults that clear most of the world's physical silver, has been drawn down hard over the last few years. And when you look closer at the pile that remains, you find something most people never bother to check. A huge share of it is not free. It is already claimed, already spoken for, already tied to somebody else's certificate. So when the title asks whether they are really running out of silver, here is my honest answer, right up front, before I prove a single word of it. The total pile is not zero, and it will not go to zero. But the part that is actually loose, actually available, actually able to be sold to the next buyer who wants real metal in his hand, is far, far smaller than the headline number suggests. That thin sliver is called the free float, and it is the whole story. Let me give you the one fact to chew on before anything else, because it is the fact that reframes everything. Most of the silver sitting in those London vaults is not sitting there waiting for you. A large portion of it is held to back exchange-traded funds, the paper silver products that millions of investors own through their brokerage accounts. That metal is allocated. It belongs, in effect, to the fund and its shareholders. It cannot be sold twice. So when someone points at the total tonnage and says, "Look, there is plenty," they are counting silver that is already wearing somebody else's name tag. Strip that out, and what is genuinely available to meet fresh demand is a shockingly small stack. That gap between the big comforting number and the tiny real one is where the pressure lives. In my years in the gold and silver world, I have learned to distrust a big round inventory number the moment somebody uses it to tell me not to worry. Because inventory is not the same as availability. A parking garage can be full of cars and still have zero cars for sale. The London vaults are a little like that garage. The building is holding a great deal of metal, but most of those cars have owners, and the owners are not selling. What matters for price, what has always mattered, is the handful of spaces that are actually open, and those open spaces have been shrinking. Here is where it gets strange, and where the enemy in this story steps into the light. The financial media loves to point at the gross vault number because it is comforting and it keeps you calm. The big trading desks love it too, because a calm holder is an easy holder, a holder who will sell you his metal at a soft price and never ask the hard question. The hard question is simple. Of everything in that vault, how much can actually leave? Nobody on the mainstream channels wants to sit you down and walk you through that math, because the answer is uncomfortable, and an uncomfortable retiree is a retiree who starts protecting himself instead of feeding the churn. They do not want you to understand the difference between what is stored and what is free. That difference is the entire game. Think about a machinist I have in mind, the kind of steady, careful man this audience is full of. He spent 40 years on a shop floor, raised his kids, paid off his house, and put away a serious retirement account doing everything the right way. He is not a gambler. He does not want to get rich quick. He just wants what he built to still be worth something when he is 80. When he hears that the world is running low on real silver, his first instinct is the healthy one. He goes and checks, and the headline tells him the vaults are stuffed. So he relaxes. What nobody tells him is that the stuffed vault and the empty shelf are the same building, and the shelf is what sets the price when the music stops. Now let me stack the reasons this thin free float actually matters, because a small number by itself is just trivia. The first reason is that silver is running a structural deficit, and has been for several straight years now. The world uses more silver than it digs up, year after year, and the gap gets filled by pulling metal out of exactly those above-ground stockpiles we have been talking about. So the free float is not just small. It is being actively eaten. Every year the deficit runs, a little more of the loose metal gets consumed and does not come back. You are watching a reservoir that has more going out of it than coming in, and the outflow has been steady for a long stretch. The second reason is the one people forget, and it is the cruelest one. Most silver does not get used the way gold does. Gold is hoarded. When someone buys gold, it goes into a vault, or a drawer, or a safe, and it sits there. And years later, it is still there, every ounce of it, ready to come back to market if the price is right. Silver is burned. It goes into solar panels, into electronics, into the guts of the electrified world we are building, spread in tiny amounts across billions of devices, in quantities so small that pulling it back out costs more than it is worth. So a great deal of the silver ever mined is simply gone, dispersed into the world, never coming home. Gold is a savings account. Silver is a campfire, and we keep throwing logs on it. The third reason is supply, and this is the part that makes the deficit so stubborn. You would think a shortage would fix itself. Prices rise, miners dig more, balance restored. Except silver does not work that way, because most silver is not mined as silver. It comes up as a byproduct of digging for copper, for zinc, for lead. The silver is almost an afterthought at those mines. So even if the silver price doubled tomorrow, a copper miner does not suddenly rip more silver out of the ground, because his decisions are driven by the copper market, not the silver one. Supply cannot ramp fast, even when the world is begging for metal. That rigidity, on top of a multi-year deficit, on top of a free float that is already thin, is a very particular kind of setup. And here is the fourth layer, the one that ties the vault to your kitchen table. For every ounce of real silver in those vaults, there are many, many paper claims trading against it. Futures contracts, unallocated accounts, promises to deliver, all of it stacked on top of the same physical pile. In normal times, that works fine, because almost nobody actually asks for their metal. They roll the paper, they take the cash, everybody is happy. But paper is a promise, and a promise is only as good as the metal standing behind it. When the loose metal is thin and the paper claims are thick, you have a structure that is perfectly calm right up until the moment a meaningful number of people decide they want the real thing. I have watched enough of these setups to tell you that they do not unwind gently. They hold and hold and hold, and then they move all at once. Let me be honest with you, because I would rather lose your click than your trust. None of this tells you what silver does next week or next month. A thin free float is fuel, not a fuse, and I am not going to insult you by pretending I know the day the match gets struck. Silver can stay cheap and frustrating for a long time, even when the physical picture is tight, because paper markets can push the price around in the short run, regardless of what is happening in the vaults. We have seen exactly that. Margin rules get changed, leverage gets flushed, and the metal drops sharply, while nothing about the underlying shortage changed at all. So do not let anyone, including me, tell you this is a guaranteed rocket. What I am telling you is that the foundation under the price has quietly gotten a lot more fragile, and fragile foundations matter enormously to a man protecting a lifetime of savings. Which brings me to the thing I actually want you to do something about, because understanding a risk and being exposed to it are two different things. If you are a retiree with $100,000 or more sitting in a 401k or an IRA, almost all of it is likely in paper: stocks, bonds, funds, promises. And you have spent this whole video learning what happens to promises when the real thing gets scarce. So here is the practical step, and it is easier than most people think. There is a way to move a portion of the retirement account you already have into physical gold and silver, real metal, without triggering taxes and without paying an early penalty, using something called a self-directed precious metals IRA. We put together a plain English walkthrough of exactly how it works, called the Free Retirement Wealth Protection Guide. Consider one fact as you decide whether to grab it. Gold recently passed the euro to become the second largest reserve asset held by the world's central banks, behind only the dollar. The most sophisticated money on the planet is quietly moving toward real assets, and the same door is open to you. This is not just for insiders or the ultra-wealthy. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is for you. From our family to yours, no obligation, nothing to buy. If you are watching this on your TV, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you're on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. Now let me pull you back into the vault, because there is a piece of history here that I think about often, and it tells you how these things actually end. Central banks and governments have tried to hold a metal price steady by throwing inventory at the market before. Back in the late 1960s, a group of the world's richest nations pooled their reserves and spent them down trying to defend a fixed price for gold. They had the biggest hoard on Earth behind them, and it still did not work. The demand for real metal simply outran their willingness to keep bleeding their vaults, and one day they stopped, and the price they had been defending gave way. The lesson is not that price defenses always collapse tomorrow. The lesson is that a pile of metal, no matter how large it looks, is finite, and the market on the other side is not. When enough people want the real thing, the size of the vault is not the story. The size of the crowd is. Here is the part that almost nobody connects, and it is the callback to that machinist checking his headline number. The comfort he took from the big vault figure is the exact same comfort those nations took from their pooled reserves. Big number must be safe, but a big number that is mostly spoken for is not safety. It is the appearance of safety, which is the most dangerous thing of all, because it convinces careful people to do nothing at precisely the moment they should be paying attention. The machinist does not get hurt because he is reckless. He gets hurt because he trusted the comforting headline and never asked how much of that pile was actually free. And that is not even the part that matters most. The part that matters is where the metal is going. Because while the loose silver in the West gets drawn down, a great deal of physical metal has been flowing east. China has at times pulled silver in so aggressively that its domestic market traded at a stubborn premium to the London and New York prices, a signal that real buyers over there were willing to pay up for real metal in hand rather than trust a paper claim settled somewhere else. When one side of the world is paying a premium for the physical and the other side is drawing its vaults down to supply it, the metal moves in one direction, and it does not come back cheaply. That flow does not show up in a casual glance at a headline inventory number, but it is one of the truest tells there is. I want to name your fear directly, because I have sat with enough people trying to protect what they spent a lifetime building to know exactly what it feels like. You are afraid of two things at once, and they pull in opposite directions. You are afraid of doing nothing and watching the value of your savings quietly erode while the insiders position themselves. And you are equally afraid of doing something rash, buying at the wrong time, and looking like a fool. That knot in the stomach is real, and anyone who tells you it is silly has never actually had money on the line. Here is the honest relief. The goal was never to bet the farm or time the exact bottom. The goal is to make sure that no single shakeout, no paper flush, no bad year can ever wipe out what you already have. That is not greed. That is the opposite of greed. That is a man building a wall. Let me give you the practical principle, the way I would say it to my own brother across the table. Never put yourself in a position where you are forced to sell. Size any move so that a scary drop is something you can sit through calmly rather than something that forces your hand. Own the real metal, or a claim on real metal you can actually stand behind, not a stack of paper promises layered on a thin pile. And never, ever sell into the panic bottom, because the panic bottom is precisely where the metal changes hands from the frightened to the patient. Those are principles, not a prescription, and your own situation is yours to weigh. But every one of them points the same direction, and it is the direction that thin free float has been quietly pointing for years. Now, here is the recognition I most want you to walk away with. And I am going to say it plainly rather than dressing it up. The people who understand this vault math are not waiting for permission. The central banks buying metal at a pace we have not seen in generations already understand it. The buyers paying a premium in the East already understand it. They are positioned. The crowd is not, because the crowd is still reading the comforting headline number and relaxing, exactly like our machinist did. And by the time this becomes obvious enough to lead the evening news, by the time your neighbor is asking you about silver at a barbecue, the quiet, patient part of this will be over, and the metal will already have moved into strong hands. Being early feels like being alone. It feels like nothing is happening. That feeling of nothing happening is not a sign you are wrong. It is the sign you are looking at it before the crowd does. The whole advantage lives in that lonely stretch. So let me answer the title one more time, now that you have seen the whole picture. Are they really running out of silver? The vaults are not empty, and I will not pretend they are. But the part that is actually free, actually loose, actually available to the next real buyer has been drawn down for years, while a multi-year deficit eats at it, and the paper claims pile higher on top. That is what running out really looks like. Not a dramatic zero, but a slow, quiet thinning of the one number that actually sets the price, hidden behind a big, comforting one that does not. And when the machinist finally understands the difference, I want him to understand it early, while the door is still open and cheap to walk through. That is where this comes home, and it is bigger than you. What you're really protecting is not just your own retirement, it is what you pass on. The account you spend a lifetime filling becomes the thing your children and your grandchildren inherit, and the decision to diversify a portion of it into real assets is a decision that reaches across generations. So this is my closing invitation, from our family to yours. Get the free Retirement Wealth Protection Guide, and if you have $100,000 or more in a retirement account and you watched this all the way through, mention that when you reach out, and we will set up a free one-on-one educational web conference to walk through your specific situation. No obligation and nothing to buy. And here is the honest reason not to wait. The window where this move is still calm, still cheap, and still fully your choice is exactly the window in which nothing feels urgent. That quiet is not a reason to delay. It is the opportunity. If you are watching on your TV, scan the QR code on your screen right now. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. Go check what is actually free in that vault, the way that machinist finally did, and make sure the metal wearing your name tag is real.